Welcome to the Business Trendsetter podcast, where we teach you all about trends and how to apply them to grow your business. My name is Manny Turan.
And I'm Adam Hartung.
Welcome to Spark Partners. Please go to our website at sparkpartners.com to learn all about how to grow your business by understanding trends, understanding the insights surrounding them. And that leads us to the conversation today that is a subject that's close to my heart. I know it's close to your heart as well, Adam. And that is manufacturing. People understand that, you've got all these amazing cloud-based technologies and apps and fintech, and there's all these major things that we interface with day in, day out. But what we forget is we're sitting on a chair. We're driving a car. We're drinking some coffee. We're buying clothes. All those things need to be made somewhere, right? And I just read something about that U.S. manufacturing is as high as ever. We're manufacturing now more than ever, but people don't understand that. And so I want to ask you some questions, Adam. Actually, I want to ask you more a philosophical question regarding what you feel is going on with manufacturing in the U.S. and what are the major trends that are associated with that?
Well, there's one trend that's going to be more important for people that are in manufacturing and for really almost all businesses globally for the next 20 years. And that's when we take a look at demographics. I know people sometimes think I just keep harping on demographics, but it's just, if you start thinking through the implications, they're profound and they can give you a huge advantage in business today. So the big trend right now that I want to pick up on in demographics, there's several, we've talked about them before, is aging of the population. We have in the United States a situation where the baby boomers are living longer. Remember, retirement was set at 65 because when Franklin Roosevelt said that'll be the retirement age, that was how long you were expected to live. Most people died by 65. Now, most people live into their 80s. The average age is 85 or 87, something like that. So we're living much, much longer than we used to. But that doesn't mean that we're going to keep working that long. People are retiring, right? And so this big group of people, the baby boomers, are kind of like, the proverbial animal and a snake, right? They kind of like going through there as a big lump. And what's happening is they're getting close to retirement age now. Some are retiring. And that's got big implications because what's going to happen? Who's going to take care of the economy? Who's going to make the stuff, like you said, if all these people go into retirement? And it's not just our problem. It's actually a problem globally. The four big manufacturers that we've always talked about for the last 100 years were the United States, obviously, but it was also Japan. Some people might remember in the 1980s when we were fearful Japan was going to take over the manufacturing sector. And then there was Germany. Germany has always been Europe's biggest manufacturing sector, and they've been a large exporter. And then the other one, the new come-along kid, has been China, right? And its giant manufacturing base that it built. But if we look at Japan, they're already in a demographic crisis. They have so few new births in their country that they're to the point that there's only 3 people working for every retiree in the country. And it's just having horrible consequences. And you see Japan hasn't been able to keep growing its manufacturing base. In China, they had this policy several years ago of a one-child policy, meaning a couple literally could only have one child. And as a result, they've got the same problem. They've got this situation where there's not enough children in the economy. And it's part of what's the problem with the Uyghur enslavement that's happening in the western part of China is they don't have enough people working in the factories. They're a very different culture than we are. So they said, well, let's go get the people we most don't like, and that's the Uyghurs. That's the leaders of the Chinese government. That's the group they dislike the most. So they just enslave them to put them into factories to put them to work because they need the workers. So, and then Germany's doing better, but still an aging population. So we start saying, wow, who's going to make this stuff? Who's going to make this stuff when we've got this problem in the 3 largest manufacturers and a burgeoning problem in Germany as well? And that's what I think people start to think through. What are these implications? So one of the big implications is going to be robotics. We keep talking about automation like it's some kind of ethereal thing or it's on the edge, but we're increasingly facing the reality that we have to have robotics. Otherwise, we can't get enough stuff made. So while some people are complaining, hey, automation and robotics are job killers, it's just what you said, Manny. In fact, we're getting more stuff out the door, but at the same time, we have all these unfilled jobs. So we need the robotics and we need the workers, right? It's that kind of a situation we're in today. But if you think about it, now it becomes sort of a little bit of the Amazon opportunity. And what I mean by that was Amazon needed to be able to store vast amounts of data, so they created what we call Amazon Web Services, AWS, right? But then what they did was, instead of just keeping that to run Amazon, they made this service available to everyone. And now it's a growing, successful business for Amazon that has revenues and profits. And that's the way I think we have to go with a lot of the manufacturers today, is we have to start saying, if you're working in robotics and automation, then you need to be thinking not just of how you would use robotics, but could you sell it to somebody? Could you make a business out of the robotics that you're going to use in your world in somebody else's world? So now we start seeing how it really can create tremendous opportunities. I think you've worked a lot in manufacturing, Manny. I know that you have. And if you think about it, we're not just talking about Tesla or General Motors or John Deere or something like that. That's not what's on our mind. A lot of manufacturers out there under $1 million of revenue. They're making parts that go into other things. And so those people are having the same issues that a John Deere has. And they should be thinking about, hey, if there's going to be a shortage of people, but we need all this stuff, how can I be using automation to improve my output and then selling that automation to people to improve their output?
Exactly. So I went to engineering school. Obviously, I'm a mechanical engineer, and there was a professor who was also a fellow at Raytheon. Raytheon is the factory here in Tucson that makes missiles and other things. And he was kind of a practicing fellow, high-level guy at Raytheon, and he also taught a few courses. And what was interesting about his course is that everything in this course was all about a weight and a dampener, basically a spring. He says everything in the world, it can be those two things. And a lot of people kind of scratch their head and, what do you mean, what are you talking about? And so I just thought about that because it's funny. Everything's still going to need to be made. There's still going to be product requirements. People are still going to want to buy things. And as we get to a shortage of people in the U.S. or China or Japan or whatever, it's going to have to shift elsewhere. And all it's going to be, it's just going to be a lag. It's just going to take longer. So those entrepreneurs that are really smart will think about the demographic changes and say, you know what? Here I am in Vietnam or some other country, and I see these issues happening in my neighbor of China. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shift my whatever I'm doing to expand and focus in on the U.S. in particular to try to get more business to my company in China or Vietnam, whatever. So I guess what I'm trying to say here, there's always an opportunity for what we see as a problem is really just an opportunity for somebody else.
Yeah, and I think what we have to be very aware of is that if you're a small company, just don't necessarily think about how you're going to manufacture something the way it was manufactured 5 years ago. Can you think up a new way to get the product made? Right? Could you use a different material? Could you use a different, instead of a weld, could you use a bend? Could you come up with a new kind of a forming machine? How could you improve the performance of what you're trying to make by doing it in a new and different way? So start off saying, we have a labor shortage. We have a problem getting the skilled labor. Not only do we have a problem because of the whole demographic thing that I said, but also back 30, 40 years ago, it was you liked it if you and your family, if people worked in a factory. But then we transitioned, and that became a bad thing. We started saying, well, I don't want my kid to work in a factory. I want my kid to go to college and do something else, but not work in a factory. So we haven't been building the skills base among the people. We've been building a different skill base, tech-oriented, office work-oriented, but not the sort of, how do I make an automated robotic-based factory the way we do today? So for these reasons, we've got this shortage of labor. So if you're going to go do something, I think it's really important to start with that blank sheet of paper and start saying, don't say, well, this is hard to do, or I can't do it because I've never done it before, or I can't do it because I don't have the people. Instead, say, how could I do it? Could I think up a new way? Could I make an automated way? For example, this is applied in another industry, and that's hospitality. There are people working on ways to try to have your food assembled, plated, or delivered to you, meaning brought to your table or brought to a counter using robotics in restaurant industries. Why? Well, because there's just not enough people that wanted to work in some of the lower paying jobs, like working in fast food is not a high paying job, or they don't want to. They're not, after the pandemic, as eager to go back to some of those food service jobs that they had 3 years ago, and so there's automation happening there. What's the new way I could cook the food, the new way that I could package the food, the new way that I could serve the food? That's what I'm trying to get across, is that these demographic implications create problems, but those problems are really an opportunity to figure out a new way to get something done.
That's the name of the game, right? That's how success is built, is finding an opportunity and solving that problem. People have problems. I've got a friend who is a roofer. He owns one of the largest roofing companies here in Tucson, and he's booked out for 18 months. 18 months, because he delivers a quality product, he does a good job, and he's having a really hard time finding people. And so you got to be smart about, there's going to be limitations, and everybody sees that across the board, right? How are you going to be able to do that? I mean, in your situation there, you've got construction going on at your house.
Yep.
So that whole industry is tied directly to labor, unless you're smart and you come up with new and better ways to solve the same problem.
Yep. And so one of the things that people ask, let me back this up again, demographics. And I get asked a lot, how do I make my forecast? Why are you so confident in the forecast that you make? And some of the forecasts I make also involve things like government policy. Well, let's take this one I just brought up we've got a shortage of labor. We want to get stuff made. Robotics come along, but we still don't have the right people. Well, that means we're going to have immigration. So this is, to a lot of people, immigration is a political question. It's a policy question. And, you have some politicians that say that we should stop immigration. Some people say we should have more immigration. You can look at those factors and you look at the pros and cons and the arguments that are happening in a political environment. I look at it from the standpoint that we need the people. Right? So we know that Japan is anti-immigration. They've been anti-immigration forever. If you want to go live in Japan, it takes something like 9 years to get a living permit to be a permanent resident in Japan. And I don't even think it's possible to become a citizen and vote there. They just really don't want immigrants, and they're very vocal about it. So that means their aging demographic problem, they're not going to solve it. They can do some things with automation and robotics, but they're not going to immigrate people to come in and help create a robust growing economy. China, same way. China doesn't really go out looking for immigrants. They're not going to try to recruit more people to come to live in China. Yeah. It's not the way they are. Germany, that leaves Germany and America. Well, Germany's taking a fair number of immigrants in, and what are they doing? They're building up their manufacturing base. And that's what we should be looking at. I look out there and I want to predict we're going to have a very, very large influx of immigrants over the next decade. Why? Well, it's not a policy question, it's a demand question. When people simply need the stuff, they need the services, they need to get things done, and they need the hands, they're going to say, wait a minute, why aren't let's get those hands, let's get them to work. So let's have people come in here and let's put them in these jobs. So I'm predicting that we're going to have a large immigration. Now, I say, now then think about that. What if you're at the front edge of that, right? And you say, I know I need workers. Let me get them in here and let me get them trained. If you're one of the first to go through that, then you're thinking differently, right? So, we're going to have a large group of Afghanistan immigrants coming into our country. Some of those are probably trained as carpenters, laborers, how to do things. Some of them are untrained. So this now becomes a pool of people desperate for work, needing money, wanting jobs. If you are on the front edge, you might say, could I take some of those immigrants and train them to work in my world, to be employees for me, right? So that you have this sort of clay that you can mold into the kind of worker that you need, right? So immigration is the second big factor that I think we can look at and say that's going to be a big part of what we're going to see in America over the next 20 years. And it'll affect global competition, because if Japan and China continue to refuse immigration, which you can expect, then what we can say is that gives us an opportunity to bring those immigrants into the United States, build our manufacturing base back to the point where we're growing and we outgrow Japan, we outgrow China, maybe we outgrow Germany in our growth rate. And, in 20 years, we could once again be the world's largest manufacturing nation. Yeah.
We have 300 or 400 million people south of the border.
Yeah.
In Mexico, Central America, South America. That would be amazing, trained engineers and technicians and all kinds of folks that if we were smart about it, and let me rephrase it. When we get smart about that, because I'm always a glass half full kind of guy. I make it no secret that I'm a libertarian in my political viewing, and it just makes sense. People are fearful. Fear has been driving down our economy for decades. Oh, those immigrants are going to take our jobs. Oh, this or that. You know what? Come on. It's over. It's time to really smell the roses. We have this amazing opportunity, and the fear should be turned from fear to opportunity and success.
Yeah, and I think also what bodes well for is, let's say that you are in a community and you feel like your community hasn't been growing. Well, for the longest time, what have we been letting happen? Manufacturing-oriented work, factories, we've let that work migrate out of the country. A lot of times, urban environments don't want them. In fact, the Chicagos and Detroits of the world, where we used to have these manufacturing facilities in an urban environment, we've pushed those manufacturers out, right? And they've been forced to go out to the suburbs or even further out. But then what happened is we came in and we closed a lot of them down in the outsourcing movement, whether it was maquiladores in Mexico or we're sending something to China or Brazil. Now's an opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute. What if we went back again and started saying, let's recruit. Let's put those factories in the suburbs or the exurbs that are around the large cities. Okay, it's an opportunity for growth. Now, I don't know how to get I don't know that I'd get a round of applause if I was speaking to a group of civic leaders, and I was saying, go out and build factories. They'd probably think, oh man, you're talking about 10 years ago, Adam, you're way out of touch with the times. And that's the problem. It's like, really, I'm not. Yeah, there was an migration, a movement out of manufacturing for a long time, but we're in a position now to turn that around, right? We're in a position to bring that back. And so why wouldn't you, if you're in one of these towns that are having growth issues, work to bring that back in, right? It becomes this opportunity. And how do you do that? Well, one of the start points would be to say, we're going to welcome immigrants to come in here because they need training. They're willing to probably work at a low wage for a while until they get trained. So you start saying these could become the hotbeds for bringing immigrants along, training them, and building back our manufacturing base. Don't think we're going to put it in Los Angeles. No, that's not where it's going to happen. It's going to happen much further out in the Chicos and those sorts of towns that are not in the centers.
Exactly. Well, there's a lot of things happening that it takes an awareness of, and not only awareness, but an acceptance. I think a lot of people, when we talk about trends, and this could be a good topic for another podcast, is just we hear about trends, we see these trends coming like a freight train, but we just stand there like a deer in the headlights. Why don't we act?
Right.
We go with what we know. We're fearful in our own way, so we decide not to make these big moves, and maybe we should figure out a way to make those big moves.
Now let's get to what I think is the third big opportunity, so we have the big trend at the top, that's demographics, which feeds off these other trends, right? The trend towards robotics and artificial intelligence is part of robotics, right? So that's a big trend. The second was immigration. Well, what does immigration imply? It implies housing and training and all the things that go along with bringing immigrants into a society. The third one is healthcare. Yes, we have this group of the aging population. Almost anything that you're going to do in healthcare is likely to be successful. It's a highly regulated world, but there's still opportunities. Like I see every single day, I see ads for going to a workout place, right? And they always show people in their 30s wearing really tight-fitting garb doing exercise in these workout places. If you think about it, you've got that audience. But who wants to go? Who needs exercise? Well, when you're 60, 65, 70 years old, if you don't exercise, you don't live very long, right? We know that exercising later in life is really important. And some people play golf and some tennis. But think about a health club. that was engineered or organized and designed for an aging population, right? So you start saying that's part of the healthcare movement. Supplements, which are an unregulated part of our marketplace, again, supplements become an opportunity because as people age, they want better joint health, right? And they want, the supplements become more important to you as you get older. So there's unregulated aspects of healthcare, but the regulated aspects as well. We're going to need more mobility. When people are living longer, they still want to have fun. They still want to get out. They still want to do things. But they're going to need help with mobility because simply they don't walk as fast. Heck, 20 years ago, I don't think I remembered ever seeing a person in a personalized little scooter sitting down riding around. Now it seems like I never go out into any kind of an environment that I don't see 10 of them, right? Or if I'm driving somewhere, I'm behind some kind of a vehicle that's got a bumper-mounted device on the rear end with one of these little scooters on it. I see, not every car, obviously, but I see them all the time when I'm out. What's that? It's mobility. It's providing mobility to this aging group. And so these healthcare and health enablement opportunities are going to be ripe. They're really ripe right now and for another 10, 20 years. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're saying, hey, I'd like to do something new, but I'm not quite sure what I want to do, I would say start with healthcare. Because it's the fastest growing part of our economy. It needs products. There's a big demand out there. That's something that you can think about getting into, whether it's a service like nursing homes or a service like the workout shops, or if it's a product like scooters or something else that can help with mobility, or new devices that can help people see better or live their lives better. What kinds of things could you do to take advantage of this demographic shift that we're having with this large group of people that are now going to be retirement age, and they're going to be living at home, some of whom will still need jobs, and some of whom will be fully retired and ready to spend money. So there's going to be a lot of segments in there that you can dice and cut and think about who you want to appeal to, and look for those unmet needs, because a whole lot of unmet needs in that group right now.
I really love to learn, and I learn from everybody. I learn from you. I learn from my 15-year-old son. I learned from a lot of people. He made a comment the other day that was so interesting. We were driving somewhere on the freeway, and he said, Dad, there's 1 million drivers of those semis that are going to be unemployed when those semis become fully autonomous.
Yeah.
And first of all, I was proud for her thinking that way, because obviously we talk about trends and other things when we're driving around, but as an example, all these 1 million drivers out there now that are the early drivers, maybe they're in their 20s, and there is going to be a day in the next 15 years, maybe 10, maybe 5, where their job's going to be gone.
Yep.
So why not transition to buy a van and become like an Uber for people that have limited mobility? Why not? And I can go on and on and on. So that's the kind of thinking that people in that situation need to be thinking about. Are they going to be the first to move away from the horse and buggy and go for the Model T, or are they going to be the last person selling buggy whips?
Right. Right. And so, again, you just hit upon another opportunity. So as you have somebody who's nearing retirement age, one of the part of artificial intelligence is sitting down and getting the intelligence that exists codified so that you can then build upon it with the use of computers. So if you're out there running a manufacturing facility or you're in that industry, you should be saying to yourself, how do I get all the information I possibly can out of my employees so that I can codify that information and start to put that into the autonomous robotic type of equipment that we're going to have in the future, right? And that's AI. So many people when I talk to them about artificial intelligence, they they zone out on me like, I don't understand it, I don't get it, I can't imagine it. And I'm like, wait a minute, don't you have Siri on your phone? Do you have an Alexa speaker in your house? That's all artificial intelligence based. So you're living with artificial intelligence every day. Now think about how you could apply it to your work. And you start by saying, well, can I codify something about what I do today? That leads me towards intelligence, which leads me towards, the factory of the future, all this autonomous equipment, and it leads you towards robotics, that sort of thing. So these are all the places that as entrepreneurs we can be excited from this one trend. This trend of the demographic aging, population, right? And what does that large group of aging people mean for the marketplace in just 5 years? Because the end of the baby boomers is here, right? I mean, the end of it. And so they're all 65. In like 2 years, I think it's over, right? They're all 65 or older. So you're either a working retiree or you're a full retiree. And now you don't have any baby boomers theoretically in the workforce any longer. So there's tens of millions of them. The impact of that is just enormous. It's enormous. And we haven't really thought it through, right? There aren't enough people out there thinking about what does that mean for my business as it existed in the past and how it will exist in the future. I saw today, I was just reading the newsletters on my computer, and they were talking about somebody that builds a house, and they called it 3D printing a home. And I kind of thought, what does that mean? Well, what they did was they figured out how to make a concrete slurry product, and they made it into a robotic format. And so now what they do is they're able to, at the computer, say, this is the layout of the house. And this robot can go around in circles, and it can lay this like a tube of a concrete-like product, and it just builds up. It goes around and around. It builds. Of course, it can go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Never has to stop. Never has to get fed. You just keep feeding it material, and it builds the house, right? And so you've done what? You've gotten rid of the labor that we used to have, right, to construct the house. You're getting more productivity out of the land. You're getting more houses built more quickly, makes them more affordable for the affordability crisis that we have of housing in some markets today. So this is the sort of just thinking about how can I try to do something that actually solves the problems related to the demographics. And so could I build a house without people by doing one of these robotic homes? There's other people that are starting to go out there and say, hey, instead of building a house or building an office building with 2x4s, I'm going to go get a used container. And I'm going to figure out how to put containers together and make those into dwellings, structures that can be lived in or used as offices. So it's saying, I've got something that's already built. Can I repurpose that with a lot less labor to get to the end point of where I want to be in terms of, some kind of useful structure? Yeah,
and that's that's a good segue, Adam, because a lot of people might think about these things and we talked about fear, but how do you confidently put a plan together to actually make it happen? And that dovetails to our course called Think Innovation, which is tied to basically all of this. It gives you essentially the blueprint on how to do this. And that's really, really important factor is the confidence, having that confidence to lean into these trends, lean into these opportunities, and take the fear and turn it into opportunity.
Yeah, this whole process that we've gone through, I started with one thing, a trend. And then what does that mean? How do I apply it? What does it do in terms of changing my business as it used to be? What does it create in terms of opportunities on the other hand? How could I try to get honed in on the opportunities that are likely to grow, like in healthcare? How do I foresee some of the politics, like immigration? All of that's built into the course. It's a lot of people look at it and say, wow, that looks like a big course, 28 modules, it's $1,000. And it's like, yeah, but it takes you through the process. If you don't go through these steps, what happens is you're going to end up not being successful at actually thinking about these trends and putting them into your business. It's not hard, but it does require a process, or you'll get lost along the way. And that's where the course is really, really good. It gives you that process for analyzing the trends and turning them into business opportunities.
I agree. And I'll also say that we have an expert in AI that we'll be talking with next time. His name is Taleb Alashkar. He is a brilliant scientist in the realm of facial analysis. It's not facial recognition in the sense where you actually save the image. Him and his team have an amazing tool that they have been developing that'll do the analysis on your phone, and it won't save your face. So there's some implications with privacy, and it's going to be an interesting topic. So with that, Adam, any final thoughts on the conversation on manufacturing and some of these big mega trends that we're in now?
I just think people need to get their heads in the right spot. A lot of the time you say the word manufacturing and somebody thinks about some auto plant from the 1950s, and that is not what manufacturing is today. It's mostly clean shops, it's mostly clean work, and it's smart work. The issue is, there are very few factory jobs you can do with a high school education. You have to have the high school education plus education, either learned on the job, through a VOTEC school, through a junior college, or a college degree to get enough math and get enough engineering experience to actually know how to work in a factory today. This is smart stuff, and it's creating huge opportunities, and there's going to be a lot of money made there in the sector that a lot of people gave up on a decade ago.
Very well said, Adam. As always, it's a pleasure spending this time together. And everybody go to our website, sparkpartners.com, to learn more about how you can grow your business by learning and understanding trends. With that, Adam, have a wonderful rest of the day. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.